Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now April 9th of 2025, and given that the Netflix drama continues to worsen, given that we have a lot of issues going on between Meghan Markle, the Netflix executive, CEO Greg Peters, and a lot more coming along with this. Now, we already know that they are disguising Season 1 Part 2 as a Season 2 all outright to make it appear as if the show is more successful than it really is. That's basically their overall strategy to really kind of gain the trust of so many out there that are outright rejecting Meghan Markle. Now, what's interesting about Meghan Markle is that we know that she's dealing with a lot of criticism, and valid criticism, by the way, based on how phony, authentic she truly is on camera, how narcissistic she truly is in nature, both behind the scenes and in the public eye. We have seen this time and time again about how self-absorbed she really is when it comes to, making so many different demands and being very difficult to work with on the set when it comes down to the show. But focusing on what's been going on with quote-unquote Season 2, this is where things begin to really hit a new low. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01, and thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Meghan Markle is that they are truly in panic mode based on this show in isolation. We already know that Greg Peters tried to warn Netflix way ahead of time. We're talking like 4-5 months ago about how much of a disaster this series would really be, and he was right. We all saw the ratings that it actually created, and it was nothing more than a ratings disaster. And that's exactly why they're disguising Season 1 Part 2 as an actual Season 2. It's a terrible strategy. People see right through it about how phony their marketing strategy is also. But what's interesting here has more to do with Meghan Markle and her reaction, her overall behavior toward her very own fans, and exactly how even her own fans are beginning to turn on her one after the other. Now, specifically, with the Meghan Markle drama beginning to get worse, both behind the scenes and in the public eye, in the midst of developing With Love Meghan Season 1 Part 2, that Netflix is disguising, like I say, as a Season 2, one significant development that is now active involves how the very first test screening took place for the first new episode of With Love Meghan that is planned to drop by this fall. And to no surprise, it was already terribly received. This was described to be Meghan's last meet and greet that Netflix set up between herself and the screeners that saw the first episode. However, it was best described as chaotic behind the scenes, where Meghan got very bad and abysmal reactions from the crowd. There was a moment where Meghan Markle shouted at some of Meghan's own fans that were handpicked by Netflix, and they themselves rejected Season 2 outright. Meghan labeled the fans as hecklers, and those that were forcing unfair criticism onto her new episode that is said to be more disastrous than all the other 8 episodes combined for Season 1 Part 1. Now, Meghan reportedly did sign some autographs from some of the screeners. However, shockingly, something that Netflix did not see coming was that most of the screeners were considered Markle fans, and as they walked out, Meghan and her team, along with the Netflix execs, tried to silence Meghan Markle while she was making loud remarks toward those leaving the screening, labeling those as false supporters of her brand. And after the screening wrapped, Meghan and the Netflix executives held an emergency meeting/call where Netflix was seriously worried after how even Meghan's fans were outright rejecting the next season. Meghan labeled and had moments of outrage during the meeting where she was indeed shouting toward Netflix executives about how incompetent and unprofessional her fans were as a test screener or test screeners in the very screening room. The very same comments she actually pressed to the executives were also thrown at some of the screeners, where she called them as unprofessional critics. The problem that the screeners mainly had with the next season was the acting coming from Meghan Markle. The entire episode focused on Meghan creating Italian dishes and eating in the backyard of the house as seen in the first season. Now, this episode featured 2 surprise cameos that were described to be highly controversial for the new episode, of course. Screeners also informed Netflix to drastically change their choice of music and directing style for the first episode of Season 2, as well as the editing, which was also described as very poor. Now, guys, before I move on, let me just say one thing about this. Now, the fact that Meghan goes out of her way to call her very own fans hecklers, unprofessional, incompetent, and unfair and unprofessional critics, it really goes to show you exactly how out of touch with reality she truly is. she doesn't really seem to understand that people have a mind of their own. Even if they are a fan of somebody, they're not going to automatically like something if it's bad. And that really just goes to show you how bad this show truly is. That it's even outright turning away some of her very own fans. And I know some of you are like, Meghan Markle has fans? That's a head scratcher. Well, she does, but it's a very small margin. And even they are beginning to actually kind of wake up right now and realize exactly who she's all about, what she's all about, and what she's been up to with the show. So again, we know that Netflix is very worried about this. The first episode, the first test screening for this episode, they got 7 more to go, was abysmal. It was terrible. Now, look, we already know that they are going to be doing additional filming for all episodes to kind of tack on, you know, an extra 5-10 minutes per episode to kind of lengthen the entirety of the show. That's essentially what the additional filming is for. But everything was filmed in all one shot. 16 episodes, you know, season 1 and season 1 part 2. Let's just call it what it is. It's not a season 2. They're shooting some additional footage. It's not like they're creating a whole second season. This is going to be like 2 to 3 weeks of filming max, if not more if reshoots are necessary. Alright, we'll have to see. But this is where it's really interesting, is that moving on from all of that, alright, Meghan got so deeply upset about her own issues with the fans turning into critics that held many issues with the show, to the point that she demanded Netflix executives to rethink their entire strategy for what they are about to do with future test screenings for the next 7 episodes. Now, additional filming is also set to begin by this June to lengthen each episode for season 2 to make them closer to 1 hour each per episode, as I kinda hinted at there before. Now, Netflix and Meghan are now reportedly alarmed about what's going to happen to their customers after this drops in the fall of this year. Now, again, they are aiming September to October of 2025 to drop this thing on Netflix. And look, I think it's going to be a very odd choice to drop it during the fall, because they're going to be dealing with a lot of competition during that time, both on Netflix and other streaming services. I think it's going to tank even harder than the first season, because now people are very well aware about what the show is, what it's all about, how inauthentic it really is, and that's exactly why I think you're going to see a ratings disaster beyond belief with the second one. So, look, the fact that she gets very vocal, gets very defensive toward not just those that are not fans of her, but also those that are fans of her, that are now beginning to turn into actual critics. They're showing criticism toward her show and what they actually dislike about the series. Everything across the board failed. The writing, the directing, the acting, the producing, the editing, the cinematography, everything is just subpar. And look, we know that there's a lot of problems going in for Netflix right now. They are bleeding customers/subscribers, not just because of this, but also because prices are going up. You know, rates are going up for the monthly subscription plan and other different types of plans out there for Netflix. And people are just not having it anymore. You know, they're losing content. I know that Karate Kid 1 through 3 just got taken off Netflix, which is a major blow for them. But I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. And I will catch you guys later.